Black Clover has come to an end. After almost 4 years of a solid run, Black Clover is now over for the time being. It's been a hell of a ride from start to finish, so I just wanted to make a video on it. Here is my tribute to Black Clover. On March 30th, Black Clover's final episode aired and left a lot of people speechless. Big news for the series dropped afterwards. This news actually came out a little bit early, and apparently we're getting a movie. Of course, Demon Slayer did this with Mugen Train, and that was just a balls to the fucking ceiling success, so I can definitely see why they would want to do that. It's still not certain whether or not this movie is going to be a sequel movie, meaning they would just adapt the next arc in the manga, or if it's just going to be a filler movie. I have a pretty strong feeling it's going to follow Demon Slayer's success here though, because honestly, why the fuck would it not? It has a lot to adapt if it wants a complete story for the movie. Also, I think it's likely we're gonna get a seasonal announcement. Now, of course, that's living in an ideal world though. If it does, it's game over. But anyways, that's enough about current events. For this video, I want to talk about the most impactful moments of Black Clover, from the beginning to where we're at now. All the moments in Black Clover that made everyone say, why can't every episode be like this? There have been quite a few episodes that have aired that have just broken the entire budget for the show. Every time an episode like that drops for Black Clover, it's like the second coming of Jesus Christ. Episode 34, 35, 49, 63, 93, 100. I could keep going, but I'm gonna talk about them all, so it doesn't even matter. With that said, let's get into it. Episode 1. Before we get into the big stuff, we gotta talk about the beginning. What a fucking shit show. First off, we got the main protagonist, Asta, all cocained up. The traditional generic main protagonist who is ambitious and will not shut the fuck up. You could hear this guy's autistic screeching from 2 different countries. This motherfucker turned so many people against the series early on and made people legitimately just stop watching. It was hilarious. Not to mention all the people calling Black Clover a Naruto clone. Early on in the story, it's pretty obvious that Naruto was an inspiration. Asta has a powerful being stuck inside of him that he can use as strength to basically overpower everyone else. The rival is a black-haired, good-looking, edgy guy, and of course they're both orphans. I mean, shit man, you might as well call a spade. They were literally the same story. Of course that was the case for a while, until it wasn't. Episodes 34 and 35. Episode 34, the moment that everyone realized that Yami is by far the best character of Black Clover. This guy pulls up in the most Chad way possible, saving everyone from Lit, or I guess Patria at the time. Yami as a character at this point was portrayed as lazy, as were the rest of the Black Bulls, but when episode 34 dropped, we finally got to see him go off for the first time. He also taught Asta about Ki in the most low energy way possible, which he winds up using religiously throughout the entire series. We also learned that he's a former isekai protagonist, but that's irrelevant. In episode 35, the animation budget broke, and we got this masterpiece of a fight. This, of course, is the start of a trend. Episodes that break the motherfucking budget and just go completely off. The sad part about this happening, though, is that when this does happen, the animation for all the episodes after it, up until the next episode that does this, fucking sucks. The show becomes a slideshow, but I guess that's just the downside of being a yearly anime. Still, though, this episode hit the scene running. It made Black Clover stand out a little more on its own with the absolute goated character that is Yami. This is the first time we got to see Yami in the spotlight, but it for sure isn't the last. Now it's time to talk about episode 49. Single-handedly the most important episode for the Black Bulls in Black Clover. It was the end of the Seabed Temple arc and the first time all the Black Bull members got together as a team. This arc is one of the most important arcs of Black Clover. Everyone came together when shit started to go down, and Asta single-handedly motivated everyone to break past their limits. This is the first time they actually teamed up to beat someone together, and it's also a trend we see a lot after this episode. Black Clover early on was also suspected of being a fairy tale clone with the wizard premise and whatnot, but the one thing Black Clover does so much better than fairy tale is friendship. Black Clover's untraditional relationship between its main protagonist and all of the main characters is one of the best showcases of friendship I've ever seen in anime. The Black Bulls never call each other friends, and they never win because of friendship. The Black Bulls are a family, and they win because they try hard to overcome their limits. Each and every Black Bull has a dark past that makes them act a little unique. Once we got to this episode, we finally got to see that despite all of their complicated past, they can still come together and rally around one single source of motivation, that being Asta. Asta is a well-written main protagonist, not because he's an interesting character, but because he's able to influence the main cast of characters in such a way that makes the story 10 times more interesting. The story of Black Clover before episode 49 was the story of Asta trying to fit into the Black Bulls, but afterwards, the story became the Black Bulls trying to live up to Asta's character. Them seeing him try so goddamn hard all the time finally paid off. It made them motivated to change their behavior and go past their limits both mentally and physically. This episode is a very important episode that defines the series going forward. And of course Yami had to save the day again, cause Yami. But even still, Asta's influence on the Black Bulls influenced Yami as well and made him unlock an arcane spell that later made him a target for the Dark Triad. It all ties in together. That's about it for this episode. Episode motherfucking 63, someone's high school blender project. I mean, it was good, but you cannot tell me the backgrounds for this episode was decent. Look at this shit. What the fuck is that? Backgrounds, whack. The episode itself, pretty good. Asta went sicko mode for the first time. The animation budget literally killed itself mid-episode, and also it subverted expectations. Usually when we see the main protagonist get overcome with his inner beast or whatever the fuck, he becomes unstable. In this case, he just doesn't. I mean, that's pretty cool. I don't really think anyone expected that. It was definitely a change of pace from previous shonen like Naruto or Bleach, where the main protagonist just can't fucking handle the spice apparently. And to be honest, I fucked with it day one. I was all for it. Some people didn't like it because it was just so blatantly rejecting the idea at the time, but as the series went on, more and more people got on board with it. This episode, however, was a great episode. It was the climax of the Witch's Forest arc. Asta and the Black Bulls were having a hard time dealing with the Diamond Kingdom's bullshit, so the witch decided to make Asta a Super Saiyan. The animation for the episode was by far the most stylistic episode of Black Clover at the time. The characters looked a little different, and you can tell that there was a lot of time spent into the character animation. The background animation, as I said earlier, literally decided to just fucking die mid-episode. All in all, a great episode to expand the story of Black Clover with Asta's new transformation. Transformation episodes in anime are always great, but that's really all I have to say about this episode. It's Wizard King time. I don't know what I can say about this episode that hasn't been said already. Julius is goated. The man single-handedly saved the entire kingdom. Lit, who was really Patri, who was really William Vengeance, decided it was time to finally move, and this fight was the start of something absolutely great. The Elf Reincarnation arc, the ending to one of the best shonen sagas of all time. What I mean by that is the collection of all the Black Clover arcs up to the end of the Elf Reincarnation arc. We'll talk more about that later, but right now, goddamn, this fight was truly something special. The animation was basically what you'd expect from a seasonal anime like My Hero Academia. This episode came as a surprise to most fans who of course didn't read the manga, because the ending of the fight is definitely something I don't think anyone really expected. The Wizard King dies. Or at least that's what everyone thought until the author cucked everyone by bringing him back. Yeah, I'm still pissed about it. I mean, sure it made sense, the mark on his head and stuff like that, but really? I was really hoping my boy Yami would get to be Wizard King. I guess it is what it is though. Julius is still a dope-ass character. This episode definitely kickstarted a lot of things due to what happened at the end. Ultimately, I think this was probably the best animated fight of Black Clover up to this point by far. There's really not a lot to say about it other than that. Really dope-ass episode. Episode 100. Fuck yeah. This episode is the episode that Lit finally got awakened. He was teased for so goddamn long and we finally got him this episode. We went the entire series building up to this moment and the guy woke up half asleep. Relatable. Asta and Yuno team up to beat his ass and that's basically the episode. To me, this was the climax of the Elf Reincarnation arc. Everything else after that is just the falling action because the last battle against Zagra didn't really hit the right notes for me in my opinion. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as this episode. CGI hell. In this episode, Asta and Yuno went hard against Lit. The animation was fucking great as with all the episodes I've talked about so far, and throughout this entire fight, Lit barely even broke a sweat. They really didn't stand a chance against him, but even still, this fight was pretty amazing. Asta got a new sword at the end of the episode, and that's really about it. Episode 108 also deserves an honorable mention because Noelle was such an annoying bitch at the start of the anime. You couldn't go a single episode without her saying, "I'm royalty." I think everyone got it the first time she said it, but okay. This episode, however, flipped the goddamn scene. Her entire character arc led up to this moment, and the payoff was probably one of the best character payoffs in Black Clover, period. Throughout the series, we saw her trying her ass off to overcome her weakness because she really just wanted to be accepted by her family, so she dedicated her life to it. Being in the Black Bulls and of course meeting Asta changed her life for the better. It made her try harder and harder as the story progressed, and this episode is the episode where it all paid off. My god, god was this episode a breath of fresh air. Noelle actually became useful. Holy fuck. Female characters in shonen manga or anime usually fill in that Sakura archetype where they try to help the main protagonist every chapter but always seem to get in the way because they just can't help being so goddamn weak. It's an annoying trope that has plagued shonen manga and anime for far too long, and Black Clover decided to fucking end it. Female characters in shonen are starting to get better writing nowadays, and I fuck with it hard. Episode 118. The first 30 seconds of every goddamn Black Clover episode finally got explained. Lumiere, the first Wizard King's backstory, got explained before this episode, but this is where it reached its climax. To keep things simple, Lit and the elves really fucked with the humans, especially the Wizard King and his little sister, as they would just go over there to talk sometimes. Lit was horny on main, so of course he decided to marry the Wizard King's Imoto. Everything was fine of course until things started to get a little bit wacky. The Fire Nation attacked. Everyone thought it was Lumiere, but it was really just the devil corrupting humans just bullshitting around. Even Lit, the Wizard King's best friend, thought it was him for a while until he actually showed up. Lit realized his mistake, then pulled a fast one on the devil by using forbidden magic to become a devil himself, and that's how the fight started. This episode really tied a lot of loose ends together from the start of the anime too. The magic stones, the first 30 seconds, Sekre and the first Wizard King and why he was a statue, why the devil is trying to come back now, all that shit. It was so fucking refreshing seeing this episode play out. 1, the animation killed it. 2, it was everything you could ask for and more from a prequel story to the current Black Clover. And 3, we waited 118 episodes for it. It was a slow burn, but this episode is where the wick finally burnt out. I mean, look at this. It's amazing. I could look at it all day. The final battle between the devil and Asta, Yuno, Lit, Lumiere, and Sekre wasn't all that good in my opinion. The terrible CGI really ruined it, but this episode was the last well-animated episode of the Elf Reincarnation arc, and that in and of itself is pretty respectable. The Elf Reincarnation arc was truly something special. It tied up all the loose ends from all the previous arcs of Black Clover to make up something much greater than just a story arc, but a story saga. It was just an event watching all of this come into place by episode 119 where they finally defeated the devil responsible for everything. I absolutely loved every single part of it, except for the CGI, fuck that. After the whole Elf Reincarnation shit, we dived into some pretty tough times, not even just for the anime, but in life as well. Corvid happened, and is still happening. This made the anime take a 2-month hiatus from May to July of 2020. Before that though, we did get episode 128 where there was some pretty cool fights here and there, but that's really about it. It did serve to start the new arc against the Dark Triad though. After the hiatus, we had a lot of goddamn filler episodes. If you were a Naruto watcher in the 2010s, I'm sorry for the PTSD. Before too many filler episodes came out though, they made an interesting decision. They decided to adapt more of the manga, but cancel the show at episode 170 to give more time for a buffer, or at least that's what I think. The movie has a lot of shit to adapt. I don't really know how they're gonna do it, but let's hope it's good. But anyways, let's talk about the last few episodes of Black Clover. I can't really single out a specific episode here because they're all kind of interconnected and the fights get split up, but Asta and Yami versus Dante. This is peak Black Clover. The context of the fight is Dante just showed up out of nowhere looking for a fight, so the Black Bulls fought back. Ghosh fucking died, except he didn't because Grey transcended into an Archmage. Asta saw him get JoJo'd and went absolutely berserk. I remember reading this fight in the manga just a few hours after it released, and watching it animated was probably the best thing ever. After a few episodes of flip-flopping around to different members of the Dark Triad and who they're fighting, Yami shows up to the scene and starts one-on-one fighting Dante. Not too long after, he asks Asta to help him out, and of course this was a big fucking deal. The entire anime, Asta has been trying to prove himself worthy of fighting alongside the Magic Knights, and when Yami said he needed him, Asta got just the Zenkai boost he needed. The fight itself was goddamn beautiful. The animation budget went through the roof again, and a masterpiece was yet again created. Near the end, Yami tossed Asta his katana to finish him off in the most anime way possible. There was time ticking on Asta's power. It reached 1 second and they still won, literally straight from the history books. Still though, this fight nearly made me wet my pants. It was so beautiful seeing Yami fight with Asta instead of babysitting him like always. Yami did in fact get gotted, but that was just for story reasons. It ended in a loss, but you win some, you lose some, it is what it is. The last episode I want to talk about for this video is episode 170, the last episode of Black Clover. This episode fucking sucked to watch. Not because it was bad, but because the feels ran high. It was the last episode of Black Clover, so of course that got me feeling some type of way. This episode really made me reflect on my experiences with the show, and even though it started out as my Naruto replacement, after a while it became something entirely different. This episode was the hardest hitting episode of Black Clover by far. We got the backstory for Asta's devil, which we've been waiting for so long, and it actually made sense. We also figured out why Asta has no magic. His mom. Asta's mom was was basically Henry in the fact that she sucked up the mana from everything around her, except she also sucked up the life force of things as well. This of course made Asta be born with no magic, and she had to ditch him at the church or else he would have died just by her being around him. Libe, Asta's devil, had anti-magic, so of course when he got thrown out of the demon world and met Asta's mom, he was perfectly fine being around her. He basically became her son after that, and anime backstory, parent dies. She put him in the 5-leaf grimoire that she picked up, and the rest is history. The fight between Asta and Libe gets more intense as the episode carries on, and some beautiful animation kicks in like always. They really went all out on this fight. Asta, of course, being powerless, didn't really stand a chance, but as the fight carried on, we saw just how much of a better fighter Asta has become over the course of the entire series. All of the experience, all of the fights that have ingrained themselves into Asta's permanent memory came out in this fight. The techniques and moves he used from previous fights shadowed his movements as he fought against his devil. Of course, this being a shonen anime, Asta didn't beat him into submission like he was supposed to, but instead asked him to be his friend. He and the devil are both fighting the same enemies, and they're literally brothers, so of course Libe accepted. This fight really did a fantastic job at both showcasing just how far Asta has come since the start of the anime, and also at closing everything out with this being the last episode. Black Clover is not over, and it won't be for a while. All the memories I've had watching this anime mean a lot to me, and I'm stoked to make more. Black Clover is truly darker than black.